History is not only written by those who win wars or build empires. It is also shaped by what survives time, climate, and chance. Entire chapters of the human story have vanished, not because they lacked importance, but because the earth reclaimed them before memory could. Beneath deserts, under riverbeds, and along forgotten coastlines, traces of civilizations remain fragmented, silent, and often misunderstood. Archaeology does not reveal the past as a complete picture, but as scattered signals. And when those signals are combined with climate science, a far more unsettling story begins to emerge. Across multiple regions of the ancient world, archaeologists have identified advanced urban centers that appeared suddenly, flourished briefly, and then collapsed with remarkable speed. These were not primitive settlements. They had organized street layouts, standardized construction, long-distance trade networks, and evidence of social planning. Yet their decline left behind no clear record of invasion, no mass graves of war, no inscriptions describing catastrophe. What erased them was not an enemy with weapons, but an enemy far more difficult to see: environmental instability. Modern climate reconstructions based on ice cores, sediment layers, and pollen analysis reveal that the ancient world experienced dramatic and rapid climate shifts. These were not slow changes unfolding over centuries, but abrupt transitions occurring within decades, sometimes even within a single generation. Rainfall patterns shifted. Rivers altered their courses. Coastlines moved. For societies built around precise environmental conditions, survival depended on stability, not resilience. One of the most revealing indicators comes from lake sediments. Layers of silt and organic matter record cycles of drought and flood with astonishing precision. In regions once thought climatically stable, these sediments show extended periods of aridity, coinciding almost exactly with archaeological abandonment layers. Cities were not destroyed. They were left behind. Homes still contained tools. Workshops still held unfinished materials. People departed quickly, carrying only what they could, leaving behind lives interrupted rather than concluded. Further evidence comes from isotopic analysis of human and animal remains. Changes in isotopic ratios reflect shifts in diet and water sources, showing that populations were under increasing stress before disappearance. Grain consumption declined. Protein sources changed. Malnutrition became more common. These are signs not of sudden disaster, but of a slow tightening grip where survival became a daily negotiation with a changing environment. Trade networks, once thought to be markers of strength, became vulnerabilities. When climate disruption affected one region, the ripple effects destabilized others. A drought hundreds of kilometers away could interrupt food supply, raw materials, or labor migration. Archaeological layers show a sharp decline in imported goods shortly before collapse. Economies that depended on complexity struggled when that complexity became fragile. What is most striking is the pattern repeating across continents. In the Near East, South Asia, North Africa, and parts of the Mediterranean, urban decline aligns with what climatologists call rapid climate events, periods of intensified drought, monsoon failure, or cooling. These events are now confirmed by independent datasets, from tree rings to marine cores. The evidence no longer supports isolated collapse. It points to a connected world facing synchronized stress. Yet ancient societies were not passive victims. Excavations reveal adaptation attempts: deeper wells, new crop varieties, modified irrigation channels. Some communities migrated closer to water sources. Others reduced urban density or abandoned monumental construction altogether. These strategies delayed collapse, but could not fully counter environmental thresholds once crossed. When water systems failed or soil salinity increased beyond recovery, cities lost their foundation literally and socially. The absence of written testimony from these societies has long been interpreted as intellectual limitation. But this assumption is increasingly challenged. Many cultures transmitted knowledge orally or used writing materials that did not survive humid or arid conditions. Their silence is not evidence of ignorance, but of loss. What remains are patterns etched into the ground rather than words etched into stone. Satellite imaging has transformed this understanding. Beneath modern landscapes, remote sensing reveals buried street grids, dried canals, and abandoned agricultural fields extending far beyond known city centers. These images confirm that collapse was not localized, but regional, affecting entire settlement systems. What once supported hundreds of thousands of people became uninhabitable within a few generations. The story history never meant to remember is not one of mystery for mystery's sake. It is a warning encoded in earth and bone. The ancient world was interconnected, technologically capable, and environmentally dependent, much like our own. Their failure was not a lack of intelligence or ambition, but an underestimation of how quickly the natural systems they relied upon could change. Today, scientists recognize that climate thresholds exist, beyond which recovery becomes exponentially harder. Ancient societies crossed those thresholds without understanding them. We, by contrast, can measure them in real time. The archaeological record shows that collapse does not always announce itself with drama. Sometimes it arrives quietly, as wells run dry, harvests shrink, and people leave without ever recording why. What archaeology and climate science together reveal is not a single lost civilization, but a recurring human experience. Civilizations do not vanish because they are forgotten. They are forgotten because they vanished. And they vanished not through failure of culture, but through failure to adapt fast enough to forces larger than themselves. The untold story is not hidden because it lacks evidence. It is hidden because the evidence was scattered across disciplines, only now being assembled into a coherent narrative. When it is, the past stops being distant. It becomes familiar, and uncomfortably so. History was never meant to remember this story, because memory favors triumph, not retreat. But the ground remembers. The climate remembers. And now, finally, we are beginning to listen.